Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This episode is going to be jam-packed, and I'm telling you right off the bat, I'm in a fantastic mood. Later on tonight, this country is basically going to go quiet for a little while. If you call, we're probably not going to answer, because tonight is Game 3 between the Jays and the Yankees, the American League Divisional Series, and I haven't seen Blue Jays fever or baseball fever this high in Toronto or across Canada in a long, long time. It's a good vibe. Nice that we got something to be excited about. Go Jays, go. Let's wrap up this series with a sweep and get ready for the American League Championship Series. Today is also a big day because dinner is easy. Today is National Taco Day. Every year on the second Tuesday of October, we celebrate National Taco Day. And I thought, there's no way that I can properly describe the best taco layout. I have tacos all the time. I think a lot of people do. But let's go to the expert. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow explains how to celebrate National Taco Day.
I've had taco party where I have like 10 different ingredients and then so I have the salsa, the guacamole, and the different vegetable, different salads, and then different cheese, and then you have the chicken, and then you have the shrimp, and then you have the beef, you have soft taco, and then corn taco, and this kind of taco, so I love having taco parties. Okay.
Wow. Toronto, what are you doing? Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow talking about the taco parties that will likely be happening tonight, either during the game or in the lead up to it. On this episode of Scott Fox After 9, I'm going to be talking about a lot of things. Today is the day Prime Minister Mark Carney is down in Washington to meet with President Trump. Today is the day that we are going to find out the fate of the beluga whales at Marineland. Marineland, an amusement park that is now closed down in Niagara Falls, Canada, has still got these beluga whales. And the federal government refused a permit that would allow Marineland to export those whales so that they can officially shut down. They got to get the whales out of Marineland. They're just swimming around in a concrete tank right now. And the park isn't bringing in any money, and it's very expensive to care for all that marine life. They go through a lot of seafood. $2 million a month Marineland is losing. And Marineland says, well, since we're losing all of this money, we got to do something with the whales. You won't let us ship them over to China. So could you please give us a little bit of funding until we figure out what we're going to do? Well, the federal government has for now refused that request. Today is the deadline that Marineland has given out for the government to come to the table and give them the funds they need, or those whales are going to be euthanized. And I do not want that. I'll tell you, I'm not somebody who goes to political protests per se. I don't like the protesting. I don't mind people that do it. It's not for me. This is something that I would protest over. This is something that I think we should all care about. We should not want to see those whales euthanized, and God help us if they do get euthanized, because Canada will be the talk of the world when word gets out that we let this happen. So I'm hoping the government is going to come to the table. Might touch back on that later on, and if I get some news before this episode is done being recorded, then I will certainly let you know about it right here in After 9. Today I'm also going to be talking about Premier Doug Ford. Premier Doug Ford has doubled down. It's not just the Crown Royal that he wants to pull off the shelves. It seems Doug's Crown Meltdown has expanded into more. Now he might want to take all of the products from Diageo off of the shelves at the LCBO. And Doug said one thing yesterday in particular that has really got me inspired to find a good lawyer. One thing in particular that I think a good lawyer, this is all they're going to need to finally move forward with taking away the LCBO from the death grip of power that Doug Ford has on it. It's time to privatize the LCBO, and Doug Ford himself is going to give you all the reason you need to get behind my proposal to privatize it. That's coming up. Before I get to any of that, though, a few things I'd like to start with. including what happened yesterday in Ottawa. As you likely know, here in Canada, crime and punishment is an issue that we've been debating for a while. It's basically lawlessness in a lot of places because there are so many criminals that know there aren't really any consequences for the crimes that they're committing. They go out and commit these crimes. If they get arrested, they're in and out the same day. In fact, in some cases, some of these criminals are back out on the street committing other crimes before the cops have even finished the paperwork from the earlier arrest. It's bananas. The federal Liberals promised us they would introduce bail reform legislation. This is legislation to fix what they took out of the previous legislation. This has all happened in the last 10 years, this lawlessness. And the Liberals say they're going to do it and we should trust them and wait. The thing is, I find people don't really want to wait. The Liberals had a chance to do this back in June during that short sitting of Parliament right before they took the entire summer off. They didn't do it then. They didn't do it at the beginning of this session of the legislature. Instead, they opted to pursue hate crime legislation. Well, that's not good enough for the opposition. The federal Conservatives tabled a motion that got voted on yesterday, and it was quite simple: to keep violent repeat offenders behind bars. No bail for violent repeat offenders. It was a reform to the current laws that are on the books that, again, came from the federal Liberals when Justin Trudeau was the leader. Yesterday, they voted on that Conservative motion.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à la motion.
Will all those opposed please rise?
Mr. Ali.
Mr. Ali.
Madame Diab.
Madame Diab.
Mr. McDonald Malpeck.
Mr. McDonald Malpeck.
Mr. McGinty.
Mr. McGinty.
Mr. Lightbound.
Mr. Lightbound.
Mr. Robertson.
Mr. Robertson.
Mr. Ananda Sangare.
Mr. Ananda Sangare.
Miss Haidu.
Miss Haidu.
Madame Michel.
Madame Michel.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
I'm not going to go on any further. Just so you know, every Liberal voted against the Conservative motion to keep violent repeat offenders behind bars, the reforms that the Conservatives proposed to our justice system. Again, every Liberal voted against that Conservative motion. Now, if I'm being fair, and I do try to be in this podcast, I have a bias. I'm a conservative, and what you hear today is going to be from the lens of a conservative, but I can certainly be objective. Why would the Liberals vote against it? Well, it's very, very simple. The Liberals are going to introduce their own legislation. They've had a long time to do it, and they haven't done it yet, but they say they do have legislation coming, so they voted against the Conservative motion. So if they really don't want to vote for anything the Conservatives put forward, then I also don't want to hear any more talk that our leaders in Ottawa need to work together, because that's not working together. What the Conservatives proposed yesterday was perfectly reasonable legislation, and it would have solved a problem and probably made our streets a lot safer. The Liberals voted against it because they want to vote on their own bill. If the Conservatives don't support that, then you can see how divided Ottawa is. You can see where the priorities for the left are right now in that they voted against it. We could have just passed that yesterday, and that's one less thing that the Justice Minister has to put forward in front of the House of Commons later on this fall. But they voted against it. So again, if you are going out today to commit a crime, the old laws are still on the books. You'll probably be out before dinner. So don't worry about it. I guess that's the message we have to send. There's really no other way to look at it. Now let's get to the drama that is happening in Ontario. Yesterday, I played a little bit of a screaming news conference that Premier Doug Ford did. Sorry, it wasn't a news conference. He was at a rally for Unifor, the union. And he said that when the last worker walks out of that Crown Royal bottling plant in southwestern Ontario, Doug Ford's going to rip the Crown Royal off the shelves at the LCBO. Now, I don't think that that's a great idea, but the premier is the premier, and I guess he's allowed to make that decision. It's still amazing to me that one guy can decide what the rest of us drink. As is, all American alcohol has been taken off of the shelves because of the quote-unquote trade war with America. So all of the American booze is gone. You can't get Jack Daniels in Canada. You can't get California wine in Canada. All the American stuff is gone, even though the Chinese alcohol is still on the shelves, and even though the Chinese are tariffing us much, much harder than the Americans are. But that's an anomaly that Doug Ford has to be accountable for. Yesterday, he took it a step further. See, the company that has that bottling plant in southwestern Ontario that's closing. They're called Diageo. They don't just have Crown Royal as part of their portfolio. They've also got Smirnoff and lots of other products. Well, yesterday, the Premier doubled down. Not only is he still insisting he's going to take Crown Royal out of the LCBO, he may go after Smirnoff and the rest of their products as well. Listen to Premier Ford speaking yesterday in Quebec.
Ford, you said again this weekend that you might remove Crown Royal from the shelves of LCBO. How can you justify a move that could cost jobs and revenues for LCBO?
Well, it's not going to cost jobs and revenues. The only people that cause jobs and revenues is Diageo, right? Who in their right mind, any business person with half a brain, would go after their largest customer in North America? Diageo, we do over $765 million, more than any jurisdiction anywhere in the U.S. or in Canada. And they want to close down a plant over what, $8 million of wages they think they're going to save? The LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world. And I'll use that leverage to make sure we send a signal that we are pulling Crown Royal off our shelves as soon as the last person leaves that plant. And they can deal with it. And then we'll look at Smirnoffs next, because we have great whiskey that other people can produce in Ontario, and they'll enjoy just as much as Crown Royal. That's what happens when you try to undermine the people of Ontario. These large corporations are going to be held accountable. It's as simple as that.
Wow. Okay, lots to unpack there from Premier Doug Ford. If he does take the Smirnoff off, then our shelves at the LCBO are going to start getting quite bare. Crown Royal would be gone. Smirnoff and all of their products would be gone. If he takes the rest of Diageo's products off the shelves, then we're going to be missing an awful lot of stuff. Do you know what the LCBO has from Diageo right now? Gone will be Crown Royal, Smirnoff and all Smirnoff products, Johnny Walker, Kettle One, Ciroc, Captain Morgan Rum, Tanqueray and Gordon's Gin, Talisker, Lagavulin Scotch, Bailey's Irish Cream, and Guinness Irish Stout Beer. Even Guinness would be gone if Doug Ford goes ahead with this. And I think this is my biggest problem with it. We have a liquor monopoly here in Ontario, and the Premier seems to treat it like it's his own personal playground. Let me play just a little bit more of what Doug Ford said. I'm going to play one part in particular again, because I want everybody to listen very carefully to this.
We do over $765 million, more than any jurisdiction anywhere in the U.S. or in Canada. And they want to close down a plant over what, $8 million of wages they think they're going to save?
Well, that's not the part I wanted to play. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, $8 million is a tangible amount of money, Doug Ford. It's a tangible amount of money. You know, maybe instead of shaming this company because they're closing down this bottling facility and moving that bottling for all the Crown that we drink in Canada to Quebec, maybe instead of going after them for that, we should go after the companies that have no footprint in Ontario and we still willingly sell their products here. Just a thought. Because if Diageo can save $8 million a year by moving their facility to Quebec or making their operation more efficient, I don't know what business owner wouldn't do that. Now, Doug likes to point out Diageo sells millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of products here in Ontario. That's only because Ontario is one of the few places where we have a government liquor monopoly, a GLM. Government liquor monopoly. If you are allowed to sell your products in the LCBO, you don't just get your product into one store or two stores or three stores. It goes in every store in Ontario. Basically, you have a very captive market because we have one buyer for all of those stores. Now, if Diageo wants to sell their products in Alberta, Alberta has independent liquor stores. And with those independent liquor stores, they all do their own ordering. But no, the LCBO in Ontario is a monopoly. You get one, you basically get them all. Here's my biggest problem with what Doug Ford had to say.
The LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world. And I'll use that leverage to make sure we send a signal The LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world. And I'll use that leverage to make sure we send a signal. And I'll use that leverage to make sure we send a signal. And I'll use that leverage.
The LCBO is the biggest purchaser of alcohol in the world. Again, because it's a government liquor monopoly. Doug Ford saying, I, as in he, I will use that leverage to try and send a message. He shouldn't be allowed to leverage it, and that's all the proof anyone needs that this is a monopoly, and we don't allow monopolies. We just don't. He himself is bragging that he has a monopoly and he controls it, and he's going to use our liquor store to get his agenda across. I've been very, very clear on this topic for a while now that I think we should let adults make adult decisions, and people can decide with their wallet and their conscience whether or not they want to support these brands. I think the LCBO should be sold off and privatized. Every single LCBO outlet should be for sale right now, inventory included. You got to take on the staff and the responsibility that comes with it so nobody loses a job. And let's make those private businesses. Let's let people open up their own retail locations that aren't LCBO stores. It's time to get the government liquor monopoly disbanded, because it really sounds like Doug, who I do believe his heart is in the right place. I really do think he thinks he's doing a service for Ontarians. I'm here to tell him he's not. You got to let adults make adult decisions. And if I, knowing full well that we've got a trade war on with America, still want to support California wine, then I'm going to buy California wine. I like Napa wine. I like Sonoma wine. Telling me, well, just drink something else that we make here in Ontario doesn't cut it, Doug. I talked about this yesterday. Premier Ford apparently does not consume alcohol. So maybe he doesn't understand what he's suggesting here. If he's saying we're just going to take all the Crown Royal off the shelves and we have Ontario made whiskey and that's just as good. No, it's not. If you go to a Coke fan and say, hey, we don't like the way Coke is operating, so we're just going to ban Coca-Cola and all of their products across Ontario, just drink Pepsi instead. It's just as good. To a Coke fan, they don't like that because it's not the same drink. It tastes different. There's a whole bunch of differences, and people like what they like. Telling them something is perfectly legal everywhere else in the country, but it's illegal to buy it in Ontario is bananas. And it's only happening because we have a government liquor monopoly. Last word on this from Premier Ford.
But the president has two choices when it comes to that. He can deal with his closest friend and ally, or he can deal with China and Russia. And it seems like he's given more love to China and Russia than he is his closest ally in the entire world. So hopefully this meeting we can move forward and let's see what comes from it.
President Trump is who Doug Ford was talking about there. He still seems shocked that President Trump is coming after Canada. He seems stunned by this, and frankly, I don't understand why. Throughout the entire campaign, Donald Trump campaigned on tariffs. He said he was going to bring in tariffs. I really don't know why the premier is so upset about this. This is a promise made and a promise kept from Donald Trump. This is also how he sees America getting rid of income taxes. When America's making so much from tariffs, they won't need to charge their citizens money for the privilege of living in America. They're going to get rid of income taxes because of all of the tariff revenue. I don't understand what Doug doesn't understand. And let me tell you just one more quick parallel that I see in my head here that might help put this whole situation in perspective. Donald Trump imposed tariffs. He wants companies to relocate to America and manufacture in America and sell in America and be an American business. He's allowed to do that. He's the president of America. Now, here in Ontario, Doug Ford wants businesses to set up in Ontario. He wants businesses to stay in Ontario. He will punish businesses that leave Ontario. What's the difference between what Donald Trump is doing and what Doug Ford is doing? What's the difference between what Donald Trump is doing to try and attract business to America and what Doug Ford is doing to try and attract business to Ontario? It's the exact same tactic. He's going to make it very difficult if you want to leave or if you aren't already here. If you are here, hey, sky's the limit. We'll do whatever we can for you. If Doug Ford really believes that shaming and punishing Diageo for closing down one bottling plant, if he really thinks that punishing them is the way to deal with this, then he can't possibly be upset with Donald Trump without being a complete and total hypocrite. Leaders are supposed to attract business to their area. That's Doug Ford's job. It's also Donald Trump's job. How do we make it work together? That's a great question. We got to find a way to make it work together. I think that Doug is misguided in trying to fight back against America. We tried it. It didn't work. We now know the retaliatory tariffs that Mark Carney was smart enough to drop really angered the Americans. Doug Ford keeping American liquor out of the LCBO is not helping this situation. But let's talk about what's going on as far as dealing with America is concerned. Yesterday, Canada got mentioned briefly when Donald Trump was answering questions in the Oval Office.
There's a lot of companies from Canada are moving into the United States, you know. Everybody's moving back into the U.S., and he's probably going to be asking about tariffs. They're losing a lot of companies in Canada. They're coming into they left here. They left here 20 years ago when presidents that sat right at this desk weren't doing their job properly. They were probably good politicians, but they weren't good at business, and they allowed these companies to leave. And all they had to do is do what I'm doing right now. And, you know, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do, but it is. It's effective.
Well, it's exactly what Doug Ford is doing. Donald Trump is trying to be a bit of a Don. Pardon the pun. He wants businesses to come to America, to manufacture in America, to employ American people and pay taxes in America. And it's going to be lucrative for them to do it. And it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do business in America if they're not set up in America. Doug Ford's doing the exact same thing with the liquor. It's the exact same thing. Diageo, how dare you close down a plant? We're going to screw you. You won't even be able to sell your product here. And again, he's got leverage because he has a government liquor monopoly. It's time to privatize the LCBO. Sell it off. We'll set it up in a way that the government is still going to make their tax revenue, but they don't need to be involved in the day-to-day operations of that business. We know that government is not good at running businesses. And further, they don't need to be the ones deciding what Canadians can and can't drink. It's very simple. I'll decide. And you know what? If the LCBO brings back California wine, for example, or Jack Daniels, for example, and they look around and see, wow, Canadians must be really upset with the Americans because no one's buying that. Then they can make a business decision based on the fact that nobody's buying it and it doesn't make sense to carry that inventory that nobody wants. That's how this should work, and that's how it works at private liquor stores around the world, but not here in Ontario. One guy making a decision full of bluster, emotionally overreacting, and this is the result. I'm going to be really upset if he does that to Diageo. Crown Royal is a Canadian drink. Why on earth would we ban it? Just because Doug Ford doesn't like that they're not operating in Ontario? They're not going to conform to his government liquor monopoly? To me, that's just an argument for privatizing the LCBO, not an argument for anything else. It's not right that they're playing games with our liquor store. But like I said, we'll talk about the situation in America. You just heard President Trump talking about what he thinks Prime Minister Carney wants to discuss today. I really hope this goes well. And there's some suggestion that a deal might be announced today that would end some or all of the tariffs on steel and aluminum. Well, that would be great news for Canada's steel and aluminum manufacturers. Not great news for the other sectors, though, that are still being tariffed. And I'm thinking about everything from seafood to softwood lumber. Not good news at all if they don't get any relief. We need an all-encompassing deal that works in tandem with the Canada-USMCA and makes life more affordable in America and in Canada, that creates middle-class prosperity in America and in Canada. Let's take you back to the spring. Prime Minister Mark Carney on Rosemary Barton Live on the CBC. This is the Prime Minister in his own words.
And I will ask you some of those questions, but I still think that it would be helpful for Canadians to know exactly what you would do when it comes to tariffs. So why are you being so reticent to talk about that?
Because I'm a good negotiator. I have negotiated a number of situations in the past. I know how to manage crises. I know what you do in the order you can control things.
Okay, I mean, he said it. Canadians accepted it. They voted for him, and now he's on the spot. I'm not going to get down on Prime Minister Carney here. I'm not. I want him to be successful. Canada needs a good deal with America. And the only way to get a good deal is for our Prime Minister to go in there and get a deal done with Trump. Now, how he does it is completely up to him. It doesn't really matter to me. But I think the Prime Minister needs to keep in mind the Canadian people do not have an infinite amount of patience for this. There's a lot on the line here. People are losing their jobs. We're in a recession here in Canada, nearest I can tell anyway. Things are not going well. This is a big distraction that we need to end. So hopefully the Prime Minister can get it done. But if we're being fair here, if he can't get it done, can we agree that it's time for him to step aside and let somebody else take a crack at it? We had initially, when Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister, basically just Doug Ford and Danielle Smith trying to handle this because Trump hated Justin Trudeau. Well, then Carney came in and they took Doug Ford off the file. Carney said, I'll get the deal done. Trust me, I know how to negotiate. Still no deal. How long does the Prime Minister get to get a deal done before Canadians say, you had your shot, you couldn't live up to your own campaign promise, now you've got to go? We're not there yet. We're not there yet. You got to give the Prime Minister time. Today is the day. If he comes back with nothing, then we have to have a serious conversation about how much longer we need Mark Carney running this country. If he does get a deal done, that is good news. And nobody should be upset if the Prime Minister comes back and has a deal done. That, after all, is exactly what we want. I'm going to move on again. Happening today in Ottawa. It is the sentencing hearing for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. This goes back to the Freedom Convoy. The Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, quick history lesson. They set out to go to Ottawa to show that the Canadian people are united and they've had enough with the authoritarian government overreach when it came to public health measures and COVID-19. This was back at a time when there was vaccine passports and a lot of shaming if you did not get the shots. A lot of people lost their jobs over not getting the shots. People weren't allowed to go on planes and trains and all of the other things that Dr. Seuss, Prime Minister Trudeau, was coming up with at the time. And a lot of Canadians had had enough. And they organized into a convoy that drove across the country to Ottawa. Now, I'm one of those people who thinks the Freedom Convoy grossly overstayed their welcome. I think that if they had gone for one weekend, maybe two, that would have proved their point. They would have sent a message to the government. Everybody go home. Nobody was going to get arrested. But they stayed too long. In my personal opinion, they stayed too long. And when the police, with the support of the federal government and with the armed forces, in some cases, when they had enough and they went in there using the powers of the Federal Emergencies Act, arrests got made. Two people that are said to be organizers of the Freedom Convoy are Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. They were charged with mischief and counseling others to commit mischief, etc. They served a lot of time in jail. I think it was 49 days they spent in jail. They couldn't get bail, which is ironic because if you look around now at all the hardened criminals that are on our street getting bail and committing more crimes the exact same day, it's remarkable that we kept Tamara and Chris in jail as long as we did with no bail and no ability really to fight this. We put very heavy bail conditions on them when we finally did let them out. Now they find out today if they've served enough time or if they're going to have to go and spend more time in jail. This is about 1 minute and 15 seconds. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber sent out a video message yesterday to their supporters. Supporters, not just those people that sympathize with them, but also those who donated money to their legal defense fund.
Hi, everyone. Tamara and Chris live from Ottawa.
Yes.
Why are we here?
Why are we here? We might be going to jail tomorrow, actually.
We're going to do it this way so we don't have to say, we're just waiting for a few people to come on here.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have to wait for a line.
We're here. We both did the 3,000 kilometer journey across, and we're here now, and we're waiting to hear our fate tomorrow morning in Ottawa court at 10 o'clock a.m.
So 10 o'clock tomorrow. And we really just wanted to come on and say thank you so much to all of you for all the support these last few years and being a part of this journey with us. And we'll see what happens tomorrow, I guess.
It is what it is. We've been on this path for the last few years. We're here joined with our family and our spouses, so they're just off camera watching right now, probably smiling and snickering. They won't join us on this, but hey, we're here, and we're all here because of people like you standing behind us, so it is what it is.
Thank you so much for the support, Canada. We couldn't have got this far without you, so thank you.
We're here, and we're here till the end, so regardless of what happens tomorrow, everybody, keep your composure. Peace is still
eye on the prize.
Eye on the prize.
Eye on the prize.
Thanks, everyone.
Love you.
Love you.
I think that's great that they, even under the pressure that they're likely under, they took the time to still encourage people to be peaceful. There are those who are probably going to go bananas if those two get sentenced to even a minute more in jail. They're going to be absolutely furious if they get even another minute in jail. There's Tamara and Chris asking people to remain peaceful. Have they served enough time? 49 days in jail and then insane bail conditions. They went through a massive trial that cost the taxpayers millions of dollars on a mischief charge. And while no crime is okay, and they have been convicted, whether we agree or disagree with the conviction, they have been convicted by a court of law. Can we all agree they've been punished enough? 49 days in jail. All those extensive bail conditions. I don't even think they're allowed to fly at the moment. Isn't that enough? Or do we have to keep going? Do we have to punish them even more? So I have a theory that the government really wants to send a message. I have a theory that the government will accept nothing less than those people behind bars sending an unspoken message to anybody else who may dare challenge the government that that's what'll happen. You will go to jail. And if that's the consistent messaging from the government, well, that's up to the government, but it's certainly at odds with the relative minimal amount of consequences for people who are committing violent assaults and home invasions and shootings and stabbings and selling drugs and all of the other crimes that are being committed, and people are in and out the same day. That didn't happen that way for Tamara and Chris. And again, their charge, relatively speaking, is very, very minor. Now I want to move on to something else. There is a lot to talk about today. Quickly, the U.S. government is still shut down. I believe this is day 7. This came up briefly yesterday at the White House. This is U.S. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt.
While President Trump continues to negotiate peace deals, meets with world leaders, and celebrates the 250th birthday of our United States Navy, as you saw he and the First Lady do just yesterday, Democrats, unfortunately, are continuing to play political games. And we are now in day 6 of the Democrat federal government shutdown. Millions of American federal workers are under enormous financial stress as a result, wondering how they will pay their bills and take care of their families. If the Democrats do not vote to open the government tonight, federal workers will not receive their next full paycheck. Additionally, the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children will run out of federal money very soon. This program provides vouchers to buy infant formula, fresh fruits and vegetables, and other healthy foods for low-income families. It can be easily fully funded if Democrats simply vote tonight to reopen the government. Also, our incredible military service members who risk their lives to preserve and defend our country are now working without pay and will miss their next paychecks if this Democrat shutdown does not end tonight. The Republican-backed clean and nonpartisan funding bill fully funds this.
I'm going to leave Carolyn there. Not that I don't want to hear the rest. It's not our problem. It's a U.S. government problem. It's interesting to watch how the U.S. government functions. I kind of wish we had a similar system here. I don't want to see a government shutdown, but there certainly has to be some sort of a method where the government can't just spend infinite amounts of money and print more when they run out without coming back to Parliament. In the U.S., they spent their money. There's nothing left. They have to vote to give the government more money. The reason I find this so fascinating is how much longer can America operate like this, and how much longer are people willing to work for free? As of last night, the Democrats did not support that bill to reopen the government. So as of today, federal workers are not getting their full paycheck. And what they do get is going to be the last paycheck until the government is fully funded again. If you're a CBSA worker, actually down in the U.S., it would be the TSA, Transportation Safety. If you're a TSA worker in charge of airport security, probably dealing with a lot of nonsense, how many days are you willing to go to work without getting paid? How many days can you go to work without getting paid? If you're a member of the armed forces, conflict could break out at any time. How much longer are you willing to do that job with no pay? And the list goes on and on and on of federal employees. This is a major issue for labor, and I'm sure that the American people are hoping federal employees will keep doing their job to keep the government and the country running, but I wouldn't blame them if people walked off the job and said, no, I'm not going to work unless I get paid. I also understand there's probably people out there that can't afford to get to work unless they get paid. And that is really, really sad. They got to figure this thing out. They have to. Right now, there is a proposal in front of both parties. It's a clean bill. This amount of money just to pay our bills. There's no extra money in there for transgender, prostitute, cooking classes and pastry lessons in Haiti. I believe that was one of the ones that I played yesterday in the pod. There's so many examples like that. No extras for anything like that. Just enough money for them to meet the payroll and the government's obligations. That's it. That's all that's in there. And they won't even pass that so far, which is really, really crazy. By the way, while I'm talking about labor, more and more DMs coming in all of a sudden from Alberta. And I love that. If you're one of my amazing Alberta listeners, let me talk to you for just 1 second. I'm well aware of the fact that you've got a teacher strike going on right now. I'm in Ontario, and we have a lot of teacher strikes in Ontario as well. So let me put it to you this way, and I'm going to say this as someone whose partner is an educator herself. You need to decide, and we all do, how much teaching is worth. Because right now your teachers are on strike because, well, it's most of the same stuff. They want smaller class sizes. They want more pay. They want more benefits. They want more job security and yada, yada, yada. We go through this every time their contract comes up for renewal with the teachers. So let me just say this. In Ontario, in Alberta, in BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, the list goes on, Quebec, we need to decide how much being a teacher is worth. And if we decide that to be an elementary school teacher, that's worth a salary of $115,000 a year, then let's get them to $115,000 a year right now. No more screwing around. No, let's get them to 109 this contract, and then they're going to go out on strike again in 4 years, and then we'll give them another 6. Let's get them to 115 now. We just need to agree on how much it's worth to be a teacher. And here's why I say that. Because we can't keep having these strikes and schools getting shut down every 4 years because the union wants more money. We need to put up a ceiling on this. If we decide it's worth $115,000 a year for our elementary teachers, plus the other perks that they get and their benefits and their pension and all that sort of stuff, fine. Set the ceiling. That way, anybody who's considering being a teacher knows in advance, if you become a teacher, this is going to be your max salary. This current system where every 4 years they come along and they get parents all riled up because their kid's not in school because the strike is on, and they get their parents all riled up because class sizes are too big, and all the other things that they throw in there, which are really just smoke and mirrors. At the end of the day, this is about compensation. And I don't blame the teachers. Everybody wants to make the most money that they can make, but we all have to accept the fact that every job has a value. We just need to find the value so that we don't have to, every 4 years, displace kids and put people out on strike and create all this labor unrest between the government and the teachers, etc. Set the ceiling, pay teachers what they're worth, and put everybody on notice that if you become a teacher, this is how much you're going to make. Constantly raising the bar, raising salaries is not helping, and it's disruptive. If we keep going at this rate without setting a ceiling, in 4 years, if we got the teachers to 115 now, In 4 more years, they're going to say 115 is not enough. We're some of the most underpaid teachers in the country. We need 125. And then 4 years after that, it'll need to be 135, and then 145, then 155. Are we willing to pay elementary teachers $155,000 a year? Are we? I don't think many people would say we are. So let's find the cap now. Figure out what a fair salary is and how much we're willing to pay for that service. And then it's a take it or leave it thing with the teachers. We don't need to completely renegotiate their contracts every 4 years. It's very simple. This is what the job pays when you start. This is what you can make after 5 years. This is what you can make between 10 years and the time you retire. And that's it. That's all we have to decide. Constantly raising it a little bit and then setting up a strike situation every 4 years is not getting us anywhere, and it's creating a lot of anxiety and stress for parents. Let's figure it out, pay teachers what they're worth, and of course we've got to consult with them and let's understand what they do, what challenges they've got, and what they need. Let's just give them everything. But then that's it. We're going to get you to your max pay now, and then that's it. You're not going to come back in 4 years saying, now you need class sizes even smaller. Now you need even more EAs in the class. Now you need even more money. I'm saying pay them that now, but then we're done for, say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whenever we decide to revisit it. 20 years and even 10 years is probably too long, but you get the idea. Decide how much it's worth and pay them what they're worth. I got to cover something else here on the pod, and I know I'm almost at time already, but there's some fascinating hearings happening in Ottawa right now, and it all has to do with finances and the budget. Sandra Cobena, I hope I'm saying her name right, is a former banker with TD. She is now the member of parliament for Newmarket Aurora. She is someone who certainly understands how the economy works and how budgets work and how finance works. She is on the committee as a conservative, questioning the finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, about the upcoming budget. One of the things you've likely heard is that the Liberals are going to change the way they present the budget. It used to be, here's our income, here's our expenses, here's our assets, here's our liabilities. That's part of GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles. And those are a universal worldwide set of accounting principles that basically every corporation and country follows. The Liberals want to change how they present the budget. They want to do things like count infrastructure as assets. And before I get to the audio here from Sandra, I don't even disagree with the Liberals on counting those things as assets. Hey, at one point, we needed a road, and we built a road. That means we have an asset, but that asset also depreciates rapidly. That asset also requires a lot of upkeep. So it's also technically a liability, and that asset is worth nothing to anyone else because we're not going to take that road and sell it to someone. That road just stays where it is forever. It has no value to anyone else. So when they want to say it's an asset, technically they're right, but that's not really how we should look at it if we're using GAAP and if we're trying to follow the way the rest of the world does things, and also because it's also not an asset. It's technically a liability, depending on your bend or how you want to look at it. So with that in mind, by the way, actually, I'll stop myself here. Scott, what are you doing talking about accounting? You're a radio DJ and a podcaster. You know, I actually teach accounting in a weird kind of a way. If you ever take an online accounting course, whether you're working towards your MBA or you're in an actual accounting program, I actually narrate that online course. That's my voice that you're listening to, teaching you accounting. So while I don't actually know the content, I've certainly read the content, and I in a way, kind of teach an accounting course. The whole thing, by the way, you can get your master's with me if you want to get into accounting. So that is the qualifier here. Now I want to get to an interesting exchange that happened yesterday in Ottawa between Sandra Cobena, the conservative critic, and the finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne. A lot of people are saying this is him trying to mansplain his plans to Sandra. I don't know that I necessarily see it that way, but I'm certainly aware of Sandra's credentials, and she's certainly a qualified woman to be on this committee and ask these kind of questions of the finance minister. What I want you to listen for in this clip is how hard she's trying to just get a simple response out of the government and something that should be totally fair game that everyone should want to know the answer to, and how hard the finance minister is trying to avoid answering her question. Listen to this as we get ready for Budget Day, which is now coming up in less than a month.
Why are you changing how you present the budget rather than changing your reckless spending so that on a net basis you actually balance it?
Well, you should ask yourself why you voted against measures that support Canadians. I think people watching at home would be surprised to see your voting records and say you voted against measures that would make their life more easy.
Very simple answer. I really want you to answer my question. Why are you changing how you're presenting it rather than actually trying to balance the budget?
I think Canadians are entitled to transparency. In a frank discussion between you and I think your husband and your family and everyone in your riding is entitled to have more transparency to see the budgeting, where their tax dollars going to be used. I think this is about clarity, transparency.
I agree. Transparency is a good thing. But every single person in my riding does not get to rework their budget to see if it looks better at month end. The bottom line is the bottom line. Yep. If you don't have money, you don't have money. Why are you changing how you're presenting the budget instead of actually balancing it?
So the bottom line is the bottom line, but I think you cannot be against giving more information to Canadians. People want to know where their money is going. Is it for expenses or investment?
The result is the same.
Is the deficit going to be higher than under your government and Mr. Carney's government compared to Trudeau's?
You should be informing your constituent that we have the lowest deficit to GDP ratio in the G7.
Minister, please.
No, but
I'm
that
asking
really
a very
matters.
simple question. Is it going to be higher
that really
than
matters.
Trudeau's or not?
I would say you need to compare our fiscal position with the other G7 country because Canadians look at that. Our colleagues,
Minister,
the bond rating agency.
Numbers don't change. It's black and white. I come from the financial sector. Is it going to be higher than Trudeau's or lower than Trudeau's?
I know you come from the financial sector, and that's why I'm happy you're on the finance committee, but you wouldn't know because you're a very smart...
Wasn't that awful? We're going to get a budget in November that we know is going to be the largest deficit probably in Canadian history. And the Liberals are changing how they present that budget to Canadians. I really don't understand why they can't answer some very simple questions about why they're doing that and what's going to change. Because, as Sandra said, the bottom line is the bottom line. Regardless of how you classify assets and liabilities, regardless of where you place the debits and credits, it doesn't matter what column the numbers go in. Either way, a deficit is a deficit and a debt is a debt. That's all she was getting at, and the finance minister just would not answer that question. And part of the reason I'm pointing this out is because when the budget comes out, there's going to be a lot of people that like the Liberal government, that want to see the Liberal government stay in power, that are going to use that budget and say, see, it's not that bad. It's not nearly as bad as Pierre Poilievre told you. What you need to remember is they're playing games with the accounting here. They're going to try and classify things as operational expenses versus whatever. They're going to try and classify certain infrastructure as assets, whereas, as I just said a few minutes ago, they're not necessarily assets. Now, full disclosure, I don't have a problem with them presenting the budget that way, but they need to also present it the traditional way, the way that we've always done it. You know, it's bad enough that we didn't get this thing back in the spring. When they present a budget, we need to see and compare this budget to the last budget. And the only way to do that is to present the budget with the exact same set of accounting principles. If they want to change the budget and present it a different way, which I know they want to do, that's fine. Present that as well. But it needs to be both. It's not one or the other. One more here on this. It's still the same hearing. This is Jasraj Halan, I believe is how I say his name. He also is on the Conservative side, and he is questioning the finance minister. This is the member of parliament for Calgary East.
Like you said in your statement, you want to make operational spending, whatever that is, and balance it in 3 years. You know, the Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, tried this failed experiment in the UK last year. It failed horribly, and now you guys are trying to try the same accounting trick here in Canada. When at the end of the day, the bottom line is still the bottom line. I'll quote the PBO and what he's saying for your claim about splitting it between operating and capital costs. The PBO said, we haven't seen a clear definition of what would fall into capital and would fall into operating. He further said about your operating budget that we currently don't have a definition of operating budget. He went on to say something very alarming. The bottom line of the government will not change, which means debt is still debt at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many columns you try to present in front of Canadians and try to trick them. He went on to say the international public sector standards that everyone uses to measure the deficit and levels of debt will not change. The first reason that won't change is those are the accounting standards. The second reason is the ratings agencies won't let you change it. That's the first thing they're going to go to. And if they have a sniff that somehow there's a change in presentation, you bet your boots that we're going to be paying more for debt pretty quickly. So you guys are going to try the same failed experiment that Mark Carney advised the UK government on just last year. So are you guys going to be cooking the books, trying to trick Canadians with these tricky accounting practices, or both?
I think, Madam Chair, it's irresponsible for a member of Parliament to use language like that. I will say that. It's irresponsible. Because the member knows full well that we're not replacing anything, we're adding. This is a new lens for people at home to understand.
Would the minister agree debt is debt?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to listen to his question, but if I'm not allowed to respond to the same time, I've been a minister for quite some time in this House. Normally I have the same time than the colleague.
That's why it's not a new government.
Canadians deserve to correct the record because that was an irresponsible statement.
Minister.
Isn't that just gross? The responses you heard from Francois-Philippe Champagne, just awful, so dismissive, not even trying to answer the question, a politician to the core, and he's talking about something that's important to all Canadians. We need to know how bad it is. We don't want a lie to make it seem like everything is good. We need to know the reality. And the finance minister is completely obstructing that at a place where he's supposed to be transparent. You know, he may not like that a Conservative member suggested that you guys may be cooking the books, but it doesn't change the fact that his answer was awful too. One more from Francois. He was meeting with the media outside the House of Commons, and this came up.
What is your plan to show fiscal restraint in this budget amid massive spending pressures?
Well, I think the first thing is that what we're announcing today is a step in the right direction. You know, our objective is to spend less so we can invest more. We've been very clear to Canadians that we will balance the operating budget over the next 3 years by 28, 29. Well, the operating budget will be balanced.
Sorry, will be balanced against what? How do you balance the budget?
Will be balanced in the sense that by that time the revenues will cover the operating expenses.
So you don't get two different streams of revenue.
No, but that's what I'm saying. What we're doing today is to help you in a way because you'll have more clarity, more transparency. We're going to distinguish between capital investment and operating spending. So you're just going to see that, but the way that the deficit is calculated and the way the debt is reported will be the same as before. So it won't change any of the baseline. You'll be able to do the reconciliation. The Public Accounts of Canada will continue to be published, obviously, in accordance with the accounting principles that have always been used. But it's just another lens. It's just, you know, at a time where we say to Canadians that this is a generational moment, that we need to do generational investment, I think it's only fair. I think it's fair to go to Canadians and say, this is what we're going to do with respect to expenses, day-to-day expenses to run the government, to pay salaries and all that, and this is what we're going to do in order to build the future. You know, investment, for example, in infrastructure, investment in housing, the type of thing that create a better future for us collectively. So my point is that, you know, we've been saying that. This has been something that we've said all along during the campaign, that we want to provide more transparency, more clarity. And so people will be able to see the number as they used to see them, but they'll have a new lens which will help them to understand how much is day-to-day spending and how much is capital.
What is your plan?
Get ready, everybody. It looks like we're about to get snowed here. Seems like it's going to get ugly, too, when that budget comes out on November the 4th. That's all I'm going to play on the budget for today. But there is one last thing I've got to fit into this episode. I promised you that I would stay on top of a couple of things that involve animals here in Canada. We have the Marineland belugas. So far, nothing down from the government. As I record, I have not heard any commitment from Premier Ford or from Prime Minister Carney to give Marineland any money to try and not euthanize those whales. I think that we should. I think that we should give Marineland, if they say it costs $2 million a month, give them a couple of months. And while we're giving them a couple of months, let's try and find a place to send those whales. If we're not going to send them to China, there has to be another alternative. And we need to make sure that those whales are cared for. If this turns into a situation where we're going to euthanize those whales because none of the government officials wanted to get involved after the government itself blocked them from being sent over to China, then I think that that is a horrible stain on our record as a country. Now, the other one here is the ostriches out in BC. Yesterday, Ezra Levant from Rebel News went to that ostrich sanctuary. He was talking to police officers and a number of people outside there. This is from Rebel. I'm going to play about 2 minutes of this exchange, and I think that this is pretty telling. Ezra does a great job here.
If the owners of the farm tried to restart the surveillance cameras, would that be something that you would impede? And I haven't spoken to them about this. I'm just thinking, for protecting people from intruding in the zone, I understand the search warrant. It would be like a house that was a crime scene. There's yellow tape, do not enter. But when you deliberately take down security cameras, it's got nothing to do with a search warrant. That's got to do with being sneaky. Would you, as a police officer, stop the landowner from fixing those security cams?
What do you mean, to enter onto the property? So this is all under... the property's secured now. It's under a search warrant.
Got it. So
they could go on without CFIA approval. So, for example, one of the owners was allowed on the other day to visit one of the ostriches that's injured.
Right.
But that would be with CFIA approval. So not something for us to really speak to.
Do you follow what the CFIA is doing to see if there's anything that might be on its own illegal, or you just sort of, like you say, it's a CFIA operation, you don't really get involved? Like, because that seems to me that is mischief, that is beyond the scope of a search warrant, that's political, that's sneaky, and I mean, I don't know if the RCMP would abide that. Are you making sure that they don't take liberties, or is that just not part of your mandate here?
Well, I think you need to look at the contents of the search warrant, because that may very well be part of it. I can't say. So that's something to look into. As indicated, we're here to enforce the law. So certainly, if we were to witness an offense, then we would need to take action.
That was Ezra Levant talking to a staff sergeant with the British Columbia RCMP. The topic there was an interesting one. When the Canadian Food Inspection Agency went in with their search warrant, they kicked everybody off the property, and the first thing they did was disable the security cameras. Why? I mean, if they want to cordon off the property so that nobody can get on and interfere with the ostriches, that's one thing. I mean, that's why the CFIA is there. But why did they shut off the security cameras? What was the need to do that? I never did find out if that was something that was included in the search warrant, but Ezra asked a great question there, and it didn't even seem like the RCMP had a good response for it. Friends, I've gone over for today. Tomorrow, whatever gets decided today in Washington, I will be talking about. I'm waiting for a response from either level of government on Marineland and the belugas. I'm waiting for a whole bunch of different things. Oh, the sentence for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. So far, it is still not down. The judge is still reading that decision. So I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger. I'm going home to watch the Jays game. Go Jays go. Brand new episode of Scott Fox After 9 coming your way tomorrow. And I'm going to try and answer all of those questions and cliffhangers that I just left you on. Have a great day, and as always, I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. This one's available in Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get music. It's called Hey Now.